All right, hello once again. Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. We've been talking databases. We've moved into the realm of MySQL databases. I'm going through this MySQL by examples for beginners. And this is the URL of where this document is located. It is a 44-page document if you print it all out, at least it was for me. And in the previous chapter, we started going through the summary of the commands, and we went through all of them except I did skip one, and that is the select database, which we're going to look at right now. After we do that, which we're going to spend very little time on, we're going to jump down and start looking at some of the table level commands. And that's what we'll do in this series, or this lecture. So we went through an example for the beginners. We did the show databases. This is what we're going to create in just a bit. We created the Southwind, or for me, the Southwind 2 database, then dropped it. Then did a create if not exists, and then dropped it. Then showed what we have to do to create it. Talked a little bit about back quotes. Talked a little bit about comments. Talked about the use statement. And we left it right there. But what I forgot was this particular command. So we left off right here. And if I type in select database, it tells me the current database. You can say, but Jeff, it's already right here. That's true. But in earlier versions of MySQL, they didn't show the active database inside of brackets as they do right here. All right? So that should be everything as far as I know. We have now discussed everything that's as far as the database level commands. I should mention, as it says, if you drop a database, it's irrecoverable. So in other words, if you drop something here and you get rid of it and you have not saved it or made a copy of it, backed it up, put it in a log file or whatever, it's gone. I had a student working in class and she said, I accidentally removed something I didn't mean to. How do I get it back? And I said, you type it in again. All right, so let's move from the realm of talking about the database level to the table level. So remember, RDBMS that we're talking about is MySQL. And we just talked about a bunch of database stuff. We've got an empty database with nothing in it. Now we're about to talk about table stuff, where we'll put a table in there. And then a little bit later, we'll add to the table and we'll put some records that are made up of fields that are made up of characters in there. All right? In the last particular lecture that we went into, we looked at the create command and we looked at the drop command. Okay? Later on, we'll talk about alter. But we're now going to use create and drop, but not in the guise of a database, but in the guise of a table that goes into a database. So I'm going to jump into that section right now. Creating and deleting a table. Create table and drop table. Says you can create a new table in the default database using the command create table followed by the table name. You can get rid of an existing table by saying drop table followed by the table name. You can also apply the if exists or if not exists condition. So I'm not going to drop the database again. We've already done this. I don't think we have to do that. We've done the show databases. We did the select database. We've done all that stuff. So I'm going to jump down to right here. So again, where we are, if I do a show databases, all right, we've got Southwind 2. It is our active database. But now if I type in the next command up here, show tables, to show me all the tables that I have in my current database, it comes back with empty set. Now it's important to pause here and talk about what that means. Because empty set, this does not mean an error. When you run a query, which is kind of what we just did here, it's not really a query, but when you ask for information from MySQL and you've asked for it correctly, but there's nothing that meets the criteria that you ask for, it comes back with empty set. So imagine, I'm going to give you two quick examples of what I'm talking about. Imagine that I've got a class of students. It's a very small class. It's got 3 people in it. Okay? And let's say we've got Ben, Luke, and Marie. All right, we've got Ben, Luke, and Marie. And I say, okay, how many of you in this class are named Jack? And no one raises their hand. I asked a valid question. There just was no one that met the criteria that I was asking. So the answer to that would be the empty set. In much the same way, if I have those three people, and let's say that they're all working for me, and they all make different money. So let's say that Ben makes $50,000 a year, Luke makes $60,000 a year, and Marie makes $70,000 a year. And I ask the question, how many of you make more than $100,000 a year? And no one raises their hand. It's not an invalid question. There's just nothing that meets that criteria. All right, so when that happens here, we get back empty set. All right, so we're now ready to create our first table. Remember, there are no tables in here currently. Now, they show this over multiple lines. You don't have to do that, but it sure makes it much easier to read. So I'm going to key in all the information that you see right here. In fact, I wonder if I try to do this and copy it in, if that'll work. I don't know. All right. And it did. Good. And now if I show tables, you'll notice it says I've got a products table. Now you should always get used to keying this stuff in yourself, all right, as opposed to just copying it like I did, because the day will come when you have to create a table, create a database and then a table, etc., and you won't have it all laid out like this. But let's take a quick look at everything that's in here. Every time you hit enter and you get your prompt to look like this, a minus sign followed by a greater than sign, what that means is you have not yet completed the command. So in other words, MySQL is waiting for more information from you. So we told it to create a table. If the table does not previously exist, a table called products. Well, we know it doesn't because we had the empty set in there. So this is going to create the table products. Everything is within parentheses. And this products table will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fields. Don't worry about the primary key. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it'll have a field called product ID, a field called product code, a field called name, a field called quantity, and a field called price. You'll notice with the product ID and the product code, everything's lowercase until you get to what would be considered to be the second word. This is also referred to as camel case. So the product ID field has special things about it. First of all, it's an integer field. And integer is shortened to or abbreviated to int, which means it can only hold whole numbers. It's unsigned, which means it can only hold positive numbers. It's got in there not null, which means we can't leave it blank. And it also has auto increment there, which means that by default, it will start with number 1. We'll change that in just a minute, but just so you know that. So product ID is a whole number field that must be positive, that can't be blank, and that starts with 1. Product code is a char field. Char means fixed character length. So each product code will be 3 characters. That means with those characters, again, what did we say a character was? Any keyboard character. So it could be alpha, it could be numeric, it could be a special character. Now with what we're doing, they'll all be alpha characters, but they don't necessarily have to be. So the product code is 3 characters, can't be blank. The default will be nothing. Don't worry about defaults, we'll talk about those later. Then we've got the name of the product. This will be a variable character length. That's the var in varchar, var for variable. So it can be anywhere from 1 to 30 characters. It can't be null, and its default again will be a blank. Quantity will be another unsigned integer, so a whole number that can't be negative. It can't be null, and it'll default to 0. I can't default it to single quote, because single quote are for text fields. and this is a number field, so we're defaulting it to 0. This one's a little confusing, the price, so let's take a quick look at it. And I'm going to make this real small. And we're saying that price is a decimal, all right, which means it's a number that can have a decimal place in it, and it says 7.2. What the heck does 7.2 mean? All right, we're going to talk about that as soon as I get this to disappear. Seven is the total number of digits we can have here. So let's put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 digits. 2 is the number of digits after the decimal place. So the maximum value I can have is 99,999.99. We also made that the default value. You'll notice that as we list these table values, except for the last one, everything has a comma after it. If I forget the comma, I'm going to get an error message. Finally, we've got down here primary key. Remember, a primary key is what's referred to as a unique record identifier. So our primary key will be the product ID. So now we've created this table. We see it's here, and we can look at what's called the schema of the table by typing in describe products. All right. Now, one thing about virtually all commands in MySQL, that if it's something that's more than 4 characters, you can oftentimes abbreviate it as just putting in the first 4 characters. These are exactly the same. So I'm just going to bring up the second one here. This is the table schema for the products table that's part of the Southwind 2 database. It shows us each of the 5 fields, their name, the type of data they can hold, whether or not they accept null, whether or not they're a primary key, their default values. Notice these two are blank because we said the default value was single quote, which is also referred to as the empty string. And anything extra, well, the extra was our primary key field was an auto increment field. Again, I am parroting what's shown in the book right here. Now, if I want to, I can run this show create products again. Remember that show command shows me what I typed in. So that shows me literally this is what was accepted into the system. And notice it puts the backticks in there for me. This could have probably fit into almost one big line, but then it would have went off the screen. It would have made it very hard for us to go back and look at it and possibly make changes to it. All right? So here's the explanation of those columns that we put in. Again, this is the same stuff I just mentioned to you. So product ID, non-negative whole number, product code, fixed length, alphanumeric, which means it can contain letters, numbers, or special characters of length 3, name, variable length up to 30 characters, quantity, whole numbers, non-negative, decimal, well, they've got 10.2, which is not what they put in there. They put in 7.2. As it says, when you work with this stuff, decimal is precise. Decimal is typically used for monetary values or values that, have something to do with currency. Not null, as it says there, specifies that the column cannot contain a null value. Null means unknown. Primary key, again, a unique record identifier. Auto increment means that by default, and we're going to change that in just a minute, start with 1. All right? Now, let's see what's after this. Okay. What we're going to do next is we're going to put data into the table. Because right now, if I attempt to look at the data that's in this table, so I type in select star from products, whoops. Again, I'm putting my keywords into uppercase. Notice I get the empty set back. There is no data in there yet. So the author is going to show you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ways to put in data. So we're going to look at all of them. I'm going to type those in. I don't want to be lazy and just copy this. So insert into products, values, and I'm going to put this on a new line here. You can tab over to line it up if you want to. 1001, pen red, 5,000, and 1.23. And I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to hit enter. And it says one row affected. That's a good thing. Remember, I'm going to again describe products. There's a reason for my doing this. So the 1001 will become our product ID for our first record. Pen will be the product code for the first record. Pen red will be the name for the first record. 5,000 will be the quantity for the first record. And 1.23 will be the price for the first record. Can I prove that? Well, if I type in select star from products, you'll notice it's not empty anymore. It's that same information that we just put in. 1001, pen red, 5,000, and 1.23. So that is a way that I can put in data. So if I'm going to put something in every single field, like we're doing here, it's insert, keyword, into, keyword, the table name, not a keyword, values, keyword, and I put the record into, all right, parentheses. So that's the first one. Let's put in a couple more records. So that's the first one that they showed here. Now let's put in 2 records at one time using this. So insert. Okay. Now we're going to put the word null in here, which might sound a little weird, but we're going to let the system fill in the next number for us. All right. This will be pen. Instead of pen red, this will be pen blue. We have 8,000 of those in stock. And instead of $1.23 each, they're $1.25 each. Notice when I get to the end, instead of a semicolon, I'm putting in a comma. I'm hitting enter, and now what I want to do is I want to put in yet another record. And now, since I'm done, I can put in a semicolon. And now it tells me that it's given me 2 records. So now if I select star from products, you'll notice I now have 3 records. The first record that I put in, 1. The second one, and notice the null meant, okay, you started with 1001 right here. But now since I'm putting in null, let the system figure out the next number. So after 1001 is 1002, after 1002 is 1003. All right, I've got pen in here in both cases for the product code, pen blue for the first name, pen black for the second name. The quantity is 8,000, the quantity is 2,000, the price is 125 for both of these. So this is a way that I can put in multiple records at the same time. All right. Well, putting in that null in there can be kind of, do you have to do that? The answer is no. But then, if I don't want to put it in, then I have to specify each field name that I'm going to use. So, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to again insert into products. But before values, I'm going to say in parentheses, I want to put in a product code, and I want to put in a name, and I want to put in a quantity, and I want to put in a price. All right. Now I can come in here and say, instead of having all of this stuff, I don't need the null in there anymore. Okay. So we're going to put in 2 more records this time. And instead of pen, We're going to put PEC in here because it's a pencil, and this will be pencil to be. We have 10,000 of those in stock, and they are 48 cents a piece. Again, when we get to the end, we put in a comma instead of a semicolon because we're not done yet. So PEC, now we want to put in 2H, and in there we have 8,000 of those, and it, instead of being 48 cents, those are 49 cents, and since we are done, we put in a semicolon. All right, well, notice now, whoop, I didn't mean to put 498 in there. All right, and that's why it gave me a warning. So if I show my warnings, it says that it was truncated because it only meant to be 4.98. So now let's select star from products again. Now notice it actually upped it from 49 to 50. So I'm just going to manually go in there. This is a command we'll talk about later. But I'm going to say update products, set price equal to 0.49, where product ID is equal to 1005. And let's make sure that it worked. So that it knocked it back down to 49 cents. All right, let's put in two more records, the records that are shown here and here. All right, so this time, instead of having all that stuff that we showed before, we only want to put in a product code and a name. We don't want to put in a quantity. Whoops. And we don't want to put in a price. Okay. So just a product code and a name. What that means is it will use the default values for the quantity and the price. Well, what did we put in for default values? Way back here. We said for the quantity, the default should be 0, and for the price, the default should be $99,999.99. Kind of a silly value for a default for a price, but it's the one that we're using. Okay, so we've got this. And now we only want to say for the values, PEC, it's another pencil, and pencil HB. And it worked. So again, let's select star from. So select star from products. And now we've got our next record in here. Oh, and I put PC instead of PEC. That was an error on my part. All right, so again, I'll manually go back and change that. Update products. Set product code equal to PEC, where product ID is equal to 1006, and let's make sure that it changed it. So it was PC, and we changed it back to PEC, which is what it should have been. So it's my error. All right, in the last case, let's come in here and let's put null in for everything. In other words, what we want are our default values for everything. So insert into products, values, null, 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 and null. Now we're going to get an error when we do this because we're trying to put in null for the product code. All right, so let's see what happens when we hit this. Column product code cannot be null, so we got an error message. If we want to remove the last row that we just put in, we can put in this command. We can say delete from products. I like to put these on separate lines. Now, if we just say delete from products and we put a semicolon there and hit enter, it'll remove all the records. But we only want to delete it where, so we're putting in criteria, where the product ID is equal to 1006. So we want to remove the last one that we just put in. It says, okay, one row affected. Let's select star from products, and you notice that it's gone. Now, once we put in a new record into this database right here, what's going to happen is we're going to get the ID. If we do a null in there, it'll be 1007. We've lost 1006 because we told it to remove that record. All right. If you need more on the insert into syntax, it's right here, but that's what I've gone over with you. All right. Let's check. We're again already at 26 minutes. I'm going to stop right now and come back and start on the select statement momentarily.